Hello and welcome to Latitude at Frontline. I'm Nirupama Subramanian, the host of this show. It's nearly 2 weeks since Nepal erupted with the anger of Gen Z, the country's youth. To recap quickly, the country's young people took to the streets to protest against the failure of the political class to deliver good governance, the corruption of politicians, and the lavish lifestyles they and their families were leading, while ordinary youth had to deal with poverty and unemployment. The protests spiraled into violence and arson after 20 protesters were killed. Singha Darbar, which houses the parliament building and government offices, was set on fire, as was the offices of the Kantipur media house, which brings out the Kathmandu Post. The deteriorating situation forced Prime Minister Sharma Oli to resign. He and his ministers and several other politicians of other parties were evacuated from Kathmandu and secured by the army at undisclosed locations. Nepal now has an interim government headed by the former judge Sushila Karki, who's also the first woman to have headed Nepal's Supreme Court. The interim government has promised to hold elections on March 6th, 2026, just about 6 months away. So is everything hunky-dory in Nepal now, or does the future still look uncertain and unstable? I'm going to ask Biswas Baral, the editor of Kathmandu Post, to tell us how the situation is unfolding in Nepal. Mr. Baral, welcome to Latitude.
Thank you so much, Nirupama.
At the outset, Mr. Baral, I just want to say that the attempt to destroy your newspaper's office came as a shock to many of us, and thankfully no one was hurt. Media is such a vital and crucial part of democracy. So journalist to journalist, it was heartening to see that you people were able to bring out the newspaper despite that the terrible events of that day. And it was such an important day, so it was important also for the paper to bring out the paper. So congratulations about that, and I hope you can rebuild the office as quickly as you can. But let me ask you if there's any clarity on who exactly it was that set fire to your offices, because it's contradictory, isn't it? That a protest movement that is demanding accountability from politicians, openness and transparency in government should resort to burning down a media house, which can in fact do all those things. So is there any idea about who was behind this? Was it the protesters themselves?
So when the protest started on September 8th, it was a very spontaneous thing. The members of Gen Z came together at this place called Maitikar. They were singing and dancing when I was passing by the area. And it suddenly turned into very violent demonstrations. And it got worse the next day when media houses were set on fire. The government secretariat was set on fire. Even the Supreme Court was set on fire. And even members of Gen Z, the main organizers, have said this is not us. Someone has infiltrated, some groups, vested interests have infiltrated the protests, and they are undertaking this kind of destructions. So as of now, it's hard to say who exactly is behind the arson at our newspaper. We have security camera footage that we have provided to the police. They are currently investigating it. Yeah, that's all I want to say right now.
You mentioned that infiltrators were among that the protests had been infiltrated by by entities that wanted to turn this into something else. So this actually brings me to what former Prime Minister K.P. Sharma Oli said yesterday. He used the occasion of the 10th anniversary of Nepal's constitution. September 19th is actually the 10th anniversary of Nepal's constitution, to break his silence after his hasty departure in a helicopter on September 9th. He has said that the government did not give orders to fire at the protesters on that fateful afternoon of September 8th. Nor did the police possess automatic weapons. So he's also made that allegation about infiltrators. What do you say about these claims? I mean, you have also said that there were infiltrators, but what do you say about the claims that the government did not give orders to shoot and nor do they possess automatic weapons?
I think when it comes to the government chain of command, even on the day of the protest, when things started getting a little violent, the CDO, Chief District Officer of Kathmandu, is on record saying that those who, if it gets violent, will shoot. People should be shot. If they are trying to destroy public property. One, two. There are claims that there were infiltrations, but right now it's not established if the infiltrators just wanted to provoke the police, security forces, or if they themselves are using live arms, which is taking things to a new level. Another thing is that currently the police is investigating the bullets fired that were found from the body, that were recovered from the bodies of dead protesters, and they are yet to determine who fired them. But right now, I think there is a wide consensus that the use of force by the state security forces was disproportionate. We have found that even in our reporting. And that time also the government kept saying we are just firing rubber bullets, but even rubber bullets fired at very close range can be deadly. And even there is a hospital right opposite to the parliament building. And when the police were firing rubber bullets and tear gas shells, some of their ammunition were landing inside the hospital. And it made the life of even the attending doctors very difficult. So obviously, Oli would try to defend himself, but his claim does not amount to much because even in the lead up to the protests, rather than placating the angry youngsters, he was instigating them. He was downplaying the importance of the protest. He was mocking them almost. So he was directly responsible for provoking the crowd, making them more angry, and the protest was against one after another excess of the Oli government, be it on corruption, be it its treatment, its complete dismissal of new generation and their voices, be it its treatment of law and order, be it the lifestyle of its leaders. So Oli's statements at this time must be taken with with a lot of skepticism.
He's also said that he's also hinted at a conspiracy behind the whole episode. He said people must ask, I'm quoting him, was our nation being built or being torn down? And he said that all this will become clear to the youth in times to come. He's also said that the outrage was inflated with a false and misleading narrative. What do you make of these claims? Who was he hinting at when he said, was our nation being built or being torn down? Was it an outside hand?
Yeah, he is always hinting at conspiracies. That is his way of deflecting blame against him. He is a past master at that. So I wouldn't take his claims very seriously. One, two, he did not seem to realize, or he knew, but he didn't seem to realize that his government was getting more and more and more and more unpopular. Even if you look at our own newspaper, the Kathmandu Post, in past 2 months, we had criticized Oli in terms we hadn't criticized any other democratic leader of the country. He was stifling free speech. He was systematically suppressing dissent within his own political party. He was protecting the corrupt. He seemed completely oblivious to the concerns of his countrymen. and the youth. And he seemed to be only working basically to prolong his tenure in power. So whatever he says, it's very hard to believe. He has no credible, one shred of credible evidence to establish that his government was popular, to establish that what his government was doing was somehow resonating well with the public. He was super unpopular. He was super unpopular. We had repeatedly, even in our editorial, we had warned that, look, this is getting out of hand. There might be something might happen, something drastic might happen any day, and something might happen that not just the political parties, but even the Nepali democracy might be in danger, because the autocratic leaders, the autocratic order we overthrew, it might raise its head again. But he didn't listen to anyone. He is, I think, among all the top leaders, who are reviled now, he was by far the most rigid and tone deaf.
In his speech, he has made a reference to India about the in an indirect way. Really, he's talked about the blockade, the 2015, 2016 blockade of Nepal, which India denied that it had carried out, but which all of Nepal believes had the blessings of the Indian government of Delhi. And he has made a reference to this. So and he has also said that because of that blockade, he was forced to, he had to reach out to China. He has talked about projects with China. So there seems to be a hint in his statement that this conspiracy that he's talking about seems to be hinting indirectly at India. Would you say my assessment is correct?
You see, it was a blockade in the eyes of all Nepalese, most Nepalese. It was a blockade by India, and Oli stood very strongly against it. And it was on the back of his strong stand against the blockade that he was elected the prime minister, and he was extremely popular at the time. So that context is right, but to link it to present day problem is there is absolutely zero link. There is no link. Even if we assume that there is some foreign hand, whatever, India, China, other Americans, 90% of what happened to his government is his own doing. So it just does not sound credible when he's blaming Indians or the Americans, and how he stood up to them in the past. That is a completely separate thing now. This in the current in his handling of the protest, in the handling of the government's treatment of the protest, or the way he seemed to completely sideline the concerns of the Gen Z when they said they were announcing a protest against social media ban, in his single-minded, pursuit of retaining his government, to ensuring the continuity of his government. These factors, whatever you talked about, this conspiracy, they're very, very small part of it. Even if it's true, he's just trying to cover his tracks. These are no longer credible excuses.
Of course, his was not a government on its own steam. It was a coalition government with the Nepal Congress. So, in a sense, the anger is against all parties. It's against this constant shift and churn between the three big parties, and a revolving door that always turned and brought two back and two back in power and one in opposition, and this combination between the three of them over the last 10 years. Also now the political parties, these three political parties, have seem to be reasserting themselves in a way after all that after they were forced to leave Kathmandu, after their leaders were forced to leave Kathmandu, and the kind of invective they have faced, and the kind of abuses that have been hurled at them. Now they are pushing back. They've reasserted themselves. And they made clear their unhappiness at the dissolution of the parliament. They've said that the parliament was dissolved by President Ramachandra Paudel, and he invoked the constitution while he did this. But they have said that this is extra constitutional. There was no need to dissolve the parliament, and he should have chosen a prime minister from within the existing parliament. And only if that he had failed to do so, or no candidate was suitable, then he should have dissolved it. So, are they right in saying that?
Technically, they are right. There is no provision whereby a member from outside, a person from outside the parliament can be chosen as the prime minister. There is no and a CJ, Chief Justice, cannot be the executive head. But that is looking at it from a purely technical perspective. What you have to understand, this is a revolution. This is a forced change brought about by the revolution. So if you go strictly technically, then they are right. But what is even more shocking is that yesterday the major political parties, they sat down, the Nepali Congress, UML, and the Maoist, and there seems to be zero realization that they might have played a part in bringing about whatever happened. There seems to be zero realization that their way of functioning, this musical chair between three people, alternating to become prime minister, was highly unpopular, and people wanted change. People were yearning for change. That the 2-day protests, was an expression of the deep anger and resentment against the three political parties and the top leaders. And they are somehow trying to frame it as various kind of conspiracies against their leaders. They're trying to defend the top leaders who have been chased away and beaten, unfortunately. So there is zero realization that this is a new Nepal. They still seem to believe that they control the country's fate. That it should be them who should be calling all the shots. In a way, it's true, because they were the largest political parties in the old parliament. But that is also to completely dismiss whatever happened in the 2 days of protest. Up to now, 74 people have been confirmed dead, and hundreds of others have been injured. So this change has been brought about by the blood and sacrifice of young people yearning for change. So not to not realize that and get into this nitty-gritty of technical, this was possible, that was not possible, that is going the wrong way. I think if this is their attitude, by the next election they might be wiped off the electoral scene. If they have zero introspection, if they are not even willing to acknowledge their own mistakes.
So, you spoke about the next election. They will participate in the next election. It seems likely, and it is correct, because they still exist. These parties, they are cadre-based parties. They have, in fact, they are the parties that have taken Nepal from the monarchy to a constitutional republic. So it is fair and right that they should contest the elections. But is there like a dialogue between the government, between the interim government and these parties to on the coming elections, on the logistics, on how these elections should unfold? Is there any dialogue, any interaction between the interim setup and these parties?
So during the setting up of the interim government under Sushila Karki, the political parties were acting through the president. So they were passing their messages through the president. And so president was representing the mainstream political parties in the negotiations. And he acted on their advice on many issues. So far as if so far as the consultations with the government on the holding of elections are concerned, it's too early, because even the government has not given it has not been completely formed. There are just 4 members of the parliament right now. We hear that it will be expanded to at least around 15 members of the cabinet. So even the government has not been fully formed. So in this situation, I think that will be the next step, consulting the political parties. They have said, all the political parties have said that they will go to the elections, they'll contest the elections, but they might also be calculating, because elections are just 6 months away, and the current climate is very definitely against them. So does it make sense for them to go to elections now and be completely wiped away? Yeah, that is what they should be doing, because they should be thinking of long term, not looking at their immediate electoral prospects. But given the nature of our political parties and our leaders, they'll be making that calculation too, if they go into elections for 6 months down the road. And if they are to be completely wiped out, maybe they would not want to take part in those elections, even though they might not say it publicly. But this kind of debates will be happening in all 3 of our major political parties.
You spoke about how there was zero appreciation among these parties, the Nepali Congress, the Communists, and the UML, about what has happened and their own role in bringing this upon themselves. And but one also sees that none of the leaders of these parties have resigned or decided that they will make way for the next generation, perhaps because the younger leadership would be more in tune with what Gen Z in Nepal wants. So that's also quite surprising.
Yeah, they seem to believe that they can somehow prove that this was a complete conspiracy. There was a hand of foreign powers. I don't know what they are thinking, but at least the top 3 leaders of the top 3 parties, they seem to be in a denial mode, and they are not ready to relinquish power, which is the very minimum that the Gen Z protesters were demanding. And frankly, if that doesn't happen, then I don't see how they can make an electoral comeback, because all 3 of these leaders are extremely unpopular, and it would not make sense for any of them. It would be suicidal for them to go into elections with these 3 leaders.
So when you say 3 leaders, you mean
Kamal Dahal of Maoist Center, K.P. Oli of CPN UML, and Sirbadur Dewa of Nepali Congress.
Yeah, and these do these parties have a next generation of leaders? Are they being groomed to take over? Not because of all this, but in a general sense, parties do tend to have layers of leadership. Not counting, I'm not including dynastic parties in this, but the Nepal parties are not really dynastic.
I think
so. There would be layers of leadership in these parties, and those are they not forward and think.
I think in Nepali Congress there is some opposition to Dewa. At least people can speak freely. There are some young leaders who are saying we should embrace this new spirit of change. So there is some level of opposition to Dewa, but in other 2 political parties, in the UML is in complete control of K.P. Sharma Oli. No one in the lead up to the protest or in last 2 years, no one dared to speak against him, even inside party meetings. And those who did, they were summarily expelled or sidelined. So these were one-man shows, basically. They still are. And these leaders ensured that there was no successor, so that they could forever continue to maintain their grip on the party. So no, they didn't groom their successors, and this was a very deliberate strategy. That said, there are, I think, all 3 parties have a next generation of leaders if they are to make a concerted effort to pick them. But right now, the way these parties are structured, especially the Maoist and the UML, it's very hard to see an alternative leader emerging, at least within the next to be ready for elections within the next 6 months.
Are the other parties, the smaller parties, sort of better positioned to take advantage of the elections when they're held, if they're held on the 6th of March of 2026? The Rashtriya Swatantra Party, the Prajatantra Party, they have a younger profile, don't they?
So, yes, they have a younger profile, but even now, the leader of the Rashtriya Swatantra Party is in jail on corruption charges. And
he was freed by protesters.
He was freed, but he is again in jail.
Right.
He's again in jail. He's been jailed, and there is a disquiet even inside his party on his one-man leadership. So there's a lot of churning happening even within the RSP new party, and I don't know how it will do in the upcoming election, because even the Ravi Lamichhane, who is in jail, does not seem to be very popular among Gen Z. They expressly put out statements that their protests were not meant to release him, as eventually happened. On the Rashtriya Prajatantra Party, which is a pro-monarchy party, it will have some level of support, but I don't see it doing extremely well too, because even these Gen Z protesters, they have said that that we are not in favor of a revival of monarchy. For instance, there were some leaders from Gen Z, a small minority, were saying monarchy should be restored. Monarchy should be made the head of the state. But that demand was ignored, because the majority of the Gen Z protesters and their leaders said, we are not in favor of reviving monarchy. So right now, everything is in a state of flux. It's very hard to say which party will gain or lose. But what we can say in general is that, say, if Balendra Shah, who is the mayor of Kathmandu, very popular mayor of Kathmandu, if he were to form a party and go into elections, then he might do well. If the Gen Z were to form a party and go into the elections, they might do well, because the popular wave seems to be with them. But as far as the prospect of the traditional political parties is concerned, it's very hard to say right now.
What about a situation in which the elections are not held? If the government, say, if the interim government is unwilling or is unable to hold the elections on March 6, 2026, what happens then?
I think the constitutional experts, if you hear the constitutional experts in Nepal, they are very clear that the failure to hold elections in 6 months, or let's say it can be extended by a few months, right? If 90% of preparations for elections are complete and the government says, give me 1 month more, that can be done. But if, say, elections can't be held in a year, then we will be on a path of a complete collapse of the current constitution. And if the current constitution goes, then who knows what will replace it. It will be a state of political and constitutional vacuum.
So in that situation, would the army step forward to play a role? Is the army sort of waiting in the wings to play that kind of a role?
So even this time, when
sorry to interrupt, it is a pro-monarchy army, isn't it? I mean, in the way it is in its formation and in its structure, it's always been an army of the monarch, isn't it?
Yeah, it was an army of the monarch. It was named after the monarchs. It was called Royal Nepali Army. Now it's Nepali Army. But what you saw even during 2006, during Jan Andolan, and in 2008, the army advised the king to leave the palace. They said, we will not be able to contain this popular uprising without bloodshed. So at the end of the day, even the army told Gyanendra Shah in 2005, to agree to all the demands of the protesters. And this time, if you look at what happened after 2 days of the protest, there was a state of complete vacuum. The police were demoralized. All the police stations had been burned down. Their equipment had been stolen. People are walking in the streets with the guns stolen from police. So the army had, in a way, taken over, right? So there was a lot of speculation about the return of monarchy because of its old relationship with monarchy, that the army would back the monarchs, that would bring that back. But but the army didn't do that at all. Instead, it seemed to be facilitating a move towards the restoration of the democratic order as soon as it could. So as soon as it could find a prime minister, and even interestingly, the prime minister was chosen in popular vote by Gen Z representatives through this social platform called Discord.
So, Biswas, you were saying how the prime minister, the interim prime minister, was chosen by social media, and that's the first time. It's a first for Nepal. But my question really is that, although it's being talked about so much across the world about how this happened, an election by social media, that too of the leader of a country, has its own problems, right? I mean, there are several ways in which an election through social media can be manipulated by fake identities, one person assuming multiple identities, anonymous voters, voters who are not necessarily Nepali. So how much can we depend on Discord to elect our leaders? I mean, the elections, on the ground elections, are supposed to be the best way to elect a leader, right? Social media is not thought of as a great way to elect a leader.
Yeah, that is ordinarily true. And we will not be electing our leaders, electing the next government through any social media app. But what you have to remember is that when that exercise was being undertaken, there was no government in place. The Nepali government had collapsed. In a way, even the state machinery had collapsed. And so it was a way for the Gen Z, the protest leaders, to give a way out of the current situation. So they decided to hold this election in an app, whereby they shortlisted 4, 5, 6 figures who have a proven track record. They are impeccable figures. They have all proven themselves in various fields. They are free from corruption. So these figures were listed. So if there was some shady figure in there, of course there would have been questions asked. But when Sushila Karki was finally picked, there was no dispute on her name, because she was the most popular candidate even among the Gen Z. And when they presented, and again, it's important to bear in mind that the Gen Z leaders of the protest picked their candidate for the prime minister. They didn't directly elect prime minister, so they picked it, and the president appointed her the prime minister later. So yeah, again, in normal course of events, there's no question of electing a leader through Discord or such apps. But this was a special circumstances, and the reason it was acceptable is that all the top contenders in fray were credible figures. They were not shady candidates.
Mr. Baral, is there a requirement for a national dialogue between all the political parties, between Gen Z, between the interim government? Should all these people, civil society, should everybody actually get down together and, for a national consensus on the elections, on how they should be fought, so that even the political parties then really get an idea of what is required of them, what they should now do in order to become acceptable to Gen Z. Otherwise, you have this positioning, right? You have a leader who's been chosen by Gen Z as an interim prime minister, and you have the political parties on another side. So there's already a kind of positioning between these two, the interim administration and the political parties, as if, there can be no meeting ground between them. But there has to be, right, for the matter to move forward. in a constitutional and democratic way. So shouldn't everybody be talking to everybody, especially the political parties and the interim administration?
But yes, ideally they should be talking to each other. But what you have to remember is that unless the leaders, the top leaders of the three political parties, say with the protest and its outcomes are legitimate, those are expression of people's wishes, those are expressions of people's frustration, building frustrations with the mainstream political parties and especially their leaderships that has been growing for years and years. And those frustrations were centered on the three leaders, Pushpakamal Dahal, K.P. Sharma Oli, and Shervadu Dewa. So there is absolutely the Gen Z representatives and even many members of the civil society, increasingly even the media. There's a consensus that these three should not be a part of any future equation. So there is no, uh, use talk including them in talks. They are discredited figures. How can they are not even legitimate figures to voice their concerns? So if the political parties accept the changes, if they change the leadership, and if they internalize the spirit of the current revolution, and if they come to table, of course there can be meaningful dialogue. But right now, I don't think the leaders of the Gen Z or even members of the civil society or even the media will support the same three leaders representing Nepali people, as in the leaders of the three biggest political parties of Nepal sitting down and negotiating with other stakeholders. It's just not a credible solution right now.
In this atmosphere, is there anything that India can do to help Nepal move ahead on this issue of how everybody can come together and move forward?
I think the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke to our Prime Minister via the phone. They talked for nearly half hour. And what is good is that India has said that it respects the spirit of the Gen Z movement. Even in past elections, India has supported Nepal with logistics. So if it wants to see timely elections, then India will be expected to help Nepal with the logistics. Right now, there are no indications that India is unhappy with whatever has happened. It's been very welcoming of the new Prime Minister. So far, I think the indications are good, and I think the indications are that it will leave it to the Nepali stakeholders to decide what is best for them, and it will enter the fray only if its vital interests come under threat, and there are no such indications right now.
Of course, an Indian hand is always suspected in every change of government in Nepal, and Nepalis are very conscious that India is this big brother that intervenes all the time in its political crisis. So any intervention by India may also not be seen in a great light by Gen Z.
Yeah, I think it will be best to let things settle down of its own accord here. I think the Nepali army was in close consultations with various stakeholders in India during the changes, and I think even the Nepali army got, from my knowledge, I got the message that India is in favor of finding solutions from within the current democratic framework. That there should not be any extra constitutional powers coming in. So far, India's role has been pretty measured, I think.
What about these reports that India's Hindutva organizations are actually fueling a return to the monarchy? There were pro-monarchy protests earlier in the year in Kathmandu and other parts of Nepal, where we saw posters of the Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh state in India. or Yogi Adityanath. So there's this feeling among sections of Nepalis that India is pushing for a return to the monarchy, and by that route, for Nepal to declare itself a Hindu Rashtra. So what is going on there? Is that has that thing died down?
There has been some influence of even the Hindutva politics in India and Nepal. You see greater assertion of the Hindu identity. There is also a wish among at least some in the Indian establishment that Nepal again be declared a Hindu state. That is there, but again, as far as the current protests are concerned, and whatever is transpired now, there does not seem to be an Indian hand, and I think it will not do justice to this spontaneous movement of young people, the future of Nepal, to suggest that this protest was somehow instigated by outsiders. It was. There might have been infiltrations in it, but the reason this protest has started, they had absolutely nothing to do with any other outside powers. The problems lies within the country. The problem lies with the current generation of leaders who claim to represent Nepalese.
Mr. Biswas Baral, thank you so much for your insights. Thank you for participating in this interview. I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.
And we'll be in touch with you again
thank you so much. Thank you for making me a part of the show.
Thank you.